Thank you so much. Great to see everybody. I also want to thank the 500 people who are in the overflow room next door. You know, I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank the First Lady. Is she here? Where am I looking? Oh, is she? Well, wherever she is, I don't see her, but I want to thank her for being here. Oh, there you are. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank Governor Herbert for his tremendous video. I want to thank the Hoover Institute for having us. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for her leadership and her willingness to be supportive. And thank all of you for taking the time to come in the middle of the day, because we all know that you love America and that we want to see the direction we're going to go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about policy and where I think we need to go from a policy perspective. Then we're going to get into politics a little bit, but we'll cover everything along the way. You know, if you look at where we are in our country right now, it's tough to see where we are, and you don't have to turn on the news to see it. We're $34 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. We are now paying more in interest than we are in our defense budget. You know who's paying attention to that? Russia, China, and Iran. And I would love to tell you that Joe Biden did that to us. And he sent us down this roller coaster of socialism that's dangerous. But I've always spoken in hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today. Donald Trump and our Republicans did that to us too. You go back and look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that passed with no accountability. It expanded welfare to where we now have 80 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our country. And did Republicans try and make it right? Nope, they doubled down and opened up pet projects and earmarks for the first time in 10 years, pushing through 7,000 of them last year. In the 2024 appropriations budget, Republicans put in $7.4 billion worth of pet projects and earmarks. Democrats, bless you, Democrats put in $2.8 billion. So now you tell me who the big spenders are. All while 1 in 6 American families can't afford their utility bill. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers. We can't keep going on like that. So don't you think it's finally time we had an accountant in the White House? We have to go back to being the party of fiscal discipline. And the way we do that is we start by clawing back the $100 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are still sitting out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud. 1 out of every $7 was spent fraudulently. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance the budget every day. I had to balance the budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance the budget? We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate their earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. And then we'll take as many federal programs as we can and we'll send them down to the state level. That way we'll reduce the size of the federal government. That way we reduce the size of the federal government, but we empower people on the ground. Think education, think healthcare, think welfare, think mental health. If you cut those strings and send those resources down, then it's more customized to the state that it's in, and you don't have Washington bureaucrats making those decisions. And then we need to open up the middle class. Right now, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So we want to cut taxes on the middle class and simplify the brackets. We want to eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. And we want to make small business tax cuts permanent. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. We need to start acting like it. And speaking of Congress, Congress has one job, just one job, to make sure that they put a budget out on time. Now this week, they're talking about another government shutdown. Do you know Congress has only given us a budget on time 4 times in 40 years? 4 times in 40 years. You know what I'm going to do about that? You don't give us a budget on time, you don't get paid, period. Don't you think it's finally time we had term limits in Washington, D.C.? Don't you think we need to have mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75? Now, let me be clear when I say that. I'm not being disrespectful when I say that. We all know, bless you, we all know people who are over 75 that can run circles around us. And then we know Joe Biden. Congress has become the most privileged nursing home in the country. This is nothing to play with. These are people making decisions on the future of our economy. These are people making decisions on our national security. We need to know they're at the top of their game. And then let's talk about what's happening at the border. I can't believe this is the United States of America. 9 million illegal immigrants have come across that border. We had more fentanyl cross the border last year that would kill every single American. #1 cause of death for adults 18 to 45, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know what they're doing when they send it over. And when I was governor of South Carolina, we passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. President Obama sued us over it, and we won. I want to take what we did in South Carolina and go national with it. We'll do a national E-Verify program where every business has to prove that the people they hire are in this country legally. We will defund sanctuary cities once and for all. No more safe havens in America. We'll put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We'll go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that no one even steps foot on U.S. soil. And instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is what will stop what's happening on the border. Now, if you look, there was a chance to have done something on the border last week. Congress had a bill that would deal with the border. Now, the good part about that bill was it strengthened asylum laws. We need to strengthen asylum laws. 3 million illegal immigrants came in under the Trump administration because our asylum laws weren't strong enough. The weaker parts of the bill was it didn't have the Remain in Mexico policy, which we have to have, and it had a 5,000 person threshold. We don't even want a 1-person threshold. We have to make sure we know exactly who's coming into this country. But what went wrong is Congress should have gotten in a room and not finished until they could pass a strong border bill. But what happened? Donald Trump went and told them, don't pass anything until after November because it would hurt him in the election. We can't wait one more day to pass a strong border bill. So Congress up and left and went on vacation for a week. And what they should have done and what should happen is Congress needs to get in a room and figure it out And Trump needs to stay out of it, period. That's what we need to do on the board. And you know, growing up in rural South Carolina, my parents taught me you always take care of those who take care of you. But I'm going to ask you if we're taking care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, over 35,000 of our veterans are homeless. 1 in 3 suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs a doctor's appointment at the VA, on average, it takes 29 days. Why 29 days? Because on the 30th day, they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, they get a call to reschedule, and the clock starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. Now, I'm the proud wife of... I'm the proud wife of a combat veteran who served in Afghanistan. And when Michael came home to us, that was a lot of prayers answered. But that was the easy part. When we got home, life got hard. Michael couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for that year that he was gone, and the transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. We gotta love them when they come back home, too. We need to do more than just the 2-week transition. We need to take care of them for the long haul. That's why we need telehealth, so we can give them the mental health care they need right when they need it. They should be able to go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. They've earned that right. And I think the best way we go about dealing with veterans' health care, I think every member of Congress should have to get their health care from the VA, and you watch how fast that gets. It'll be the best health care you've ever seen, guaranteed, I promise. And speaking of military, let's talk about national security. The world is on fire, literally. You've got a war in Europe, you've got a war in the Middle East, you've got North Korea testing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of hitting the U.S., you've got China doing cyber attacks on our infrastructure. And Russia is doing blinding satellites that will keep us from seeing anything that's coming or any cyber attacks that they do to us. This is the time when America needs a leader that has moral clarity. We need to have a leader that knows the difference between good and bad, and right and wrong. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, in South Carolina, Donald Trump said that he would encourage Putin to invade our allies. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Because in that moment that Donald Trump went off the teleprompter, he chose to side with a thug where 500,000 people have died or been wounded because Putin invaded Ukraine. Trump chose to side with a dictator who kills his political opponents. Trump chose to side with a madman who arrests American journalists and holds them hostage. Trump decided to side with Putin, who's made no bones about the fact that he wants to destroy America. And he wants to side with him over the allies that stood with us after 9/11? In that one moment of going off the teleprompter, he made our allies more vulnerable, he emboldened Putin, and he put our military members who were serving in those areas in danger. We need a president that knows that America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. We need a president and a Congress that understands this is about preventing war. We need a president and Congress that understands that peace through strength matters. And we need a Congress and a president who understands that you don't walk back from your friends. You grow more friends and you build your alliance. That's what we have to do going forward. So we know what we need to do to get our national security on track. We know what we need to do from a domestic policy standpoint. Now what are you going to do at caucus? That's where the political comes in. Because the decision is, do you want more of the same, or do you want to go in a new direction? More of the same is not just Joe Biden, more of the same is also Donald Trump. And if your fellow Americans have made it very clear, 70% of Americans don't want Joe Biden or Donald Trump in this presidential election. 60% of Americans have said they think Joe Biden is too old and Donald Trump's too old to run for president. But also look at everything else we're dealing with. When you look at just this past year, it's been a year since I announced I was running for president. We had 14 people in that race. I defeated a dozen of the fellas. I just have one more I've got to catch up to. And you look at what happened, they said we'd never make it to Iowa. We came within 1% of second place. And then they said we were down 35 points in the polls in New Hampshire, and we came in at 43%. And what happened the night of election night? If any of you saw it, Donald Trump was unhinged. All he did was talk about revenge and my dress. The next day, he goes and says, anybody that supports her is barred permanently from MAGA. We had a little fun with that. We sold t-shirts that said barred permanently. We sold over 25,000 t-shirts when he said that. But think about what that said. If you're running for president of the United States, your job is to bring people in, not push people out of your club. He didn't stop there. Then the next day he tried to get the RNC to name him the presumptive nominee. Now, we don't anoint kings in America. We have elections. That backfired. He had to backtrack on that. Then he had a couple of judgments come down against him, and he talked about being a victim. What bothers me about all of that is whether it was the night of New Hampshire, whether it's after these court cases, at no point is he talking about the American people. He's only talking about himself. He didn't talk about the fact that we're $34 trillion in debt. He didn't talk about the fact that only 31% of 8th graders in our country are proficient in reading. He didn't talk about the fact that we have a completely open border. He didn't talk about the fact that there's total lawlessness in our cities. He didn't talk about the wars around the world. All he did was talk about himself. And that's what the problem is, because this isn't about him. It's about the American people. But then you look, it's not just that. Now I want you to look at a pattern. Everybody wants to know, why is she still running? Why is she doing this? Well, I think I've pretty much put aside the fact that I'm not trying to become vice president. And this is not about any sort of political career. If it was, I'd be out a long time ago. The reason this matters is, if you look at what's happening, this is a shift in the Republican Party. The Republican Party used to be the party of fiscal responsibility. We used to be about smaller government. We used to be about stopping wasteful spending. We used to be about making sure money was more in the pockets of the people than it was in government. But what happened under Donald Trump? All that changed. He put us $8 trillion in debt in just 4 years, more than any other president. He'll say it was COVID. That was less than 20% of it. He didn't shrink government. He grew government. He didn't stop the wasteful spending. He allowed it to happen. And Republicans followed suit with all the port projects they started bringing in. And they totally lost the respect of a taxpayer's dollar. Then they go and they're leaving the national security model of peace through strength. Now all they're doing is talking about how America needs to just take care of herself. That we need to not worry about any of our friends, that we don't owe them anything, that we don't need any sort of alliance. That's dangerous, but that's another shift. And then look at where that's getting us. Now you look at the Republican Party itself. I was in Michigan. Michigan was a bright spot in 2012. I was there. They were celebrating. Their governor was doing amazing work. They had passed a right to work bill. They were winning seats up and down the ticket. Everything was going great. Since Donald Trump became president in 2016, they lost the governor's mansion. They lost the state house. They lost the state senate. Then I went to Minnesota. Same thing. Since 2016, they've got the whole trifecta. They lost it all. Then I went to Colorado. Colorado hasn't had a Republican that's gotten more than 45% statewide since Donald Trump became president. Around the country, we aren't winning. We're losing. Donald Trump lost it for us in 2018. He lost it for us in 2020. He lost it for us in 2022. But look at a couple of weeks ago. Republicans lost the vote on Israel. They lost the vote on the border. The RNC chair lost her job. And he had his fingerprints in all of that. At some point, if Republicans really want to get this back on track, we've got to acknowledge that maybe it's him. Maybe Donald Trump is the reason we keep losing. And I want to make it clear, this is not personal for me. I voted for Donald Trump twice. I was proud to serve America in his administration. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter what he does, chaos just follows him. Everywhere he goes, chaos follows him. And we can't be a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos. We won't survive it. And so we see this shift in the Republican Party, but now look at what's happening to the RNC. The RNC was always supposed to be about supporting elections up and down the ticket. Now, before the primary's over, he's booted out the RNC chair. He's bringing in his daughter-in-law to run it. He's got his campaign manager who's going to do all the operations of it. And they've made it very clear that the RNC is now completely focused on Donald Trump. Knowing that he spent $60 million of campaign contributions on his own personal court cases. And now you're going to see the RNC become his legal slush fund. Now there's a resolution that has been put out at the RNC that questions whether RNC is going to pay legal fees or not. We need to all pay attention to that because I have requested the press that we need a vote on the record. We need to see how our committeemen in every state vote on whether they're going to pay for Donald Trump's legal fees or not. So now you have a party that doesn't care about fiscal responsibility, doesn't believe in peace through strength, doesn't worry about winning seats up and down the ballot, is just become a Republican Party about one man. That's it. And I'm saying we need to go back to a Republican Party that opens our tent up, that brings more people in, not drives people away, that goes back to the level of fiscal responsibility and shrinks government, that focuses on national security in a way that prevents wars, and one that's never about one person, but it's about the American people. That's always what we should be focused on. You know, 9 months ago, I dropped my husband off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and their families because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. So if they're willing to sacrifice for us there, shouldn't we be willing to fight for America here? Because we have a country to save. But in order to save her, it's going to take a lot of courage. Courage from everybody here and in the overflow room. Courage for me to run, and courage for every one of you to know. Don't complain what happens in a general election if you don't play in this caucus. It matters. And you look at the general election. In every one of these races, Trump hasn't gotten 30 to 40% of the vote. You can't overlook that because you can't win a general election if you're losing 30 to 40% of the vote. But more than that, look at the polls. In all the polls, he's down by 5, he's down by 7 to Joe Biden. On a good day, on his best day, it's margin of error. Recent poll, Marquette poll. I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to that. In every poll, Donald Trump, on his best day, margin of error. Marquette poll showed a margin of error. I'm in that same poll, and I defeat Joe Biden by 18 points. You win by 18 points. That's bigger than the presidency. That's House, that's Senate, that's governorship, that's school boards. But you win by double digits. That's a mandate going into D.C. to stop the wasteful spending and get our economy back on track. That's a mandate going into education, saying we're going to get our kids reading again and go back to the basics in education. That's a mandate to secure our borders with no more excuses. That's a mandate to bring law and order back to our cities, and as a mandate for a strong America that prevents wars that we can all be proud of. Don't you want that? Because we could have that. But that's what this primary is all about. And for the rude gentleman that decided to yell out, this is why we have to look at this, because, look, we have this decision to make. And the reason I'm doing this is not about what I care about happens to me. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for your kids and your grandkids. Think about what they've been through. The younger generation had to go through COVID, which was traumatic. They are now looking at this heavy debt and wonder what that means for them. They don't know how they're going to get a job or make ends meet. They don't ever think they're going to be able to afford a home. And they think war is going to break out at any time. And all of that is under the tent in America now, full of anger and hatred and division. And then we want to know why there's so much stress, anxiety, and depression with the younger generation. They deserve to know what normal feels like. It's not normal for Joe Biden to go and have millions of illegal immigrants come across the border and nobody stop them. It's not normal for Joe Biden to care more about gender pronouns than he does if the kids can read them or not. It's not normal for Joe Biden to have these wars around the world. But it's also not normal for Donald Trump to be siding with a dictator over our allies. It's not normal for Donald Trump to spend millions of dollars on court cases, on contributions on his personal court cases. It's not normal for Donald Trump to call the supporters of his opponents and say that they're barred permanently from his club. None of this is normal. And on top of that, Joe Biden's calling his opponents fascists, and Donald Trump's calling his opponents vermin. None of that is normal. I want to get us back to a country where it's about faith and family and freedom. I'm willing to take the cuts and the bruises and the pain and the name calling, because I think nothing good in life comes easy. But I also think sometimes you have to go through the pain to get to the blessing. We have an opportunity right now to change the tide. I just gave you the difference between where our country is and where our country could go. We are in a ship with a hole in it. That hole is Donald Trump. We can ignore the hole all we want, and we'll go down with the ship. Or we can go and see this for what it is and understand if we go in a new direction, that we can save ourselves. And that's where this all comes down, is we have to know that we can be part of the solution. We have to know that America is better than what we have right now. We have to know that we have to be part of how that's going to happen. We will have a female president of the United States. The hard truth is, it's either going to be me or Kamala Harris. If Donald Trump is the nominee, we will lose. It is that simple. We will lose. He's going to be in a court case in March and April and May and June. And the Democrats are salivating over the thought of Donald Trump being the nominee. You know, when I first announced I was running, somebody said, well, why exactly are you doing this? And I said, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for Michael and his military brothers and sisters. They need to know their sacrifice matters. They need to know they love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. The average home buyer in America now is 49 years old. The American dream is leaving them. And I'm doing this for my son, who's a senior in college. And I am tired of watching him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And for the first time, 81% of Americans don't think their kids are going to have as good of a life as we did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We do have a country to save. So now it means we have to get to work. So this is what we need to do. I need everybody to go to the caucus, and I need you to take 10 people with you. I need you to take a yard sign, and if you can't put a yard sign in your yard, put it in the back of your car. And I need you to know, we can do this, but we have to have faith. We have to have the will to be part of the solution. And this is a chance where Utah can show the country the direction that we want to go. So you do your part, and I'll do my part. So if you join our movement, this is my promise to you. You join our movement, and you get everybody you know to join it with us. And I promise you, our best days are yet to come. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.